Hello, everybody. Thank you to those who um, asked for these lectures to be um, put on. I hope you can hear me all right. Trying to speak into the mic so that it would feel, should be a little bit all right. If it's not, you will just let me know. Um, Sorry about that. Still getting used to a lot of these things. So, what's going to happen is by listening to these lectures or these, you're not going to be an expert at reading ECGs, but at least you'll get to know the basics of what's going on. So that's why we call this ECG basics, all right? Because at the end of the day, what we are trying to do is just make 100% sure that you understand what the basics are. So the first thing about the ECG is the axis, all right? So the axis of the ECG is essentially basically like you and me. We have an axis. Our axis is from the top of our head down to our center, through our center, so that when you need to turn around, you just spin on your axis. You don't put your elbow down on the ground and shimmy around. And the same thing with the Earth. The Earth has an axis, a north and a south pole that it rotates around. So the same thing with the heart. The heart has an axis. The axis that it uses tells us quite a bit, and it's a good starting off point. So that's what we're going to talk about now, right? So the question is why? Why should I determine the axis? The thing is, it starts getting you thinking about what the problem may be. Because if the axis is not correct, it gets me thinking about, okay, why is this axis not correct? And what could be the possible causes of my axis not being correct as well? So these are some of the things that we're going to look at today. All right. So let's go through it. So the first thing that we need to know is that we need to know that there are some basic limb leads. All right. So these are the leads that we attach to the body. Now, these are not the leads that are attached onto the chest. Now, I'm assuming all of you guys know at least how to attach an ECG on. If not, I would suggest that you go and just see a quick video or just try and have a look at where we put them. But to kind of make it quite easy, AVL is the lead that you put on the left hand. AVR is the one that you put on the right hand, and AVF is the one that you put on the foot. Leads 1, 2, and 3 are often confused. Whenever I've taught this lecture, people have always thought it's talking about the chest leads. Leads 1, 2, and 3 on the chest. But in actual fact, what it's talking about is it's talking about the what we call the augmented leads. So I'm just going to try and draw something here just so that we can try and get an idea of what I'm trying to say. So if we've got a little, oh, sorry, it's not really, first time I'm trying this out, it's not really allowing me to do like a freehand draw. But let's just see if we can. Don't know, it's just allowing me to put a shape. All right. So let's say we've got our little man over here. All right. Let's just draw him up over there. Let's make him a little stick figure. All right. Let's put his hands over there. Okay. And then we put his legs down at the bottom. All right, so this is our human being. So what we're going to do is now we're just going to put the way we normally put the chest leads. All right, so let's try and get some things going over here. All right, I think I'm getting the hang of this now. So if he's facing towards us, then this is his right-hand side. So that's where his AVR goes. That's where the AVL goes. And then the AVF is normally put on that side. And for those of you who put up a machine, we know that we put up AVN as well, right, which is the neutral lead. Now, what happens is that it's not the chest leads. There's nothing that's going over there, right? So what happens is the machine does a wonderful thing in that it changes the polarity of these three leads. All right, so it makes one negative and the other two positive, and it does that and it switches it around. So what it does eventually is that it creates three leads out of thin air. So even though on the body you physically got 9 leads plus a neutral, you actually get 12 leads, all right? And the lead basically is a point of view. If you can imagine the heart, let's put the heart here. Right, the heart is there. Each lead around the body is looking at the heart from its particular point of view. So that's essentially what we're trying to do here, is that we're trying to get a point of view. So what I want to do, let's just put the others. So what happens, lead 1 eventually ends up just about there, all right? Lead 2 ends up looking at the heart from just about there, and lead 3 ends up looking at the heart from just about there. So these are your 6 limb leads, all right? Very good. Now, the question I often ask people is if they can remember the orientation of it around the heart. It's always something that people can't remember. So don't worry. I'm not expecting you to know it immediately as well. We're going to get to it in a little while. All right. Okay. Let me just try and get to the next slide. All right. So let's take a look at the heart itself. All right. So if we take a look at the heart, oh, let's take our drawing man out over here. I didn't realize it gets stuck on. Let me just, okay, clear all drawings. There we go. Right, there we go. That makes life a little bit easier. And let's get back here. All right. So you'll have to forgive me. I'm also learning Zoom as we're going along. So let's look at the heart. So this is the heart in the sagittal plane. So we've got our left atrium, right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. All right. And if we were to look purely at electricity, electricity moves along the heart in a particular pathway in a whole lot of different it starts from here, goes there, then goes up, then goes there. It's also transmitted around there. But at the end of the day, it starts from the top right hand corner and moves to the bottom left. All right. So if you can imagine it going from the tip of your right shoulder to the tip of your left hip or to your left elbow, that's more or less how electricity travels through the heart. Right? And that's the normal direction of electricity. So it means if everything is functioning well and everything's going okay, then this tells us that electricity is moving in the right way. Okay. Now, why do we need to look at this electricity? That's because the heart has two systems. It's got a muscular system and it's got the electrical system. The electrical system tells us about the muscular system. So if the electrical system is working well, then it gives us an idea of that the muscular system is working well as well. And generally, if there's damage to the muscular section, there's damage to the electrical section. So the example I'll give you is imagine that you are sitting in the center of your city and you are sitting on top of the tallest building. And from the top of that tallest building, there's a friend of yours who goes to work, who you can see every morning. So here you are sitting on top of the building, and every day you notice that he comes out from work, he moves in this direction, just like how my spotlight is moving, my laser point. He moves in that direction. He comes down this way, right, in between all of this, and then he goes that way. And that's basically how he gets home. That's his route to get home. So day after day, he follows this route and he goes and he does that, all right? Now imagine if one day he comes here, he goes there, and then he turns this way, then comes that way, and then goes this way again. What can that tell us? That will tell us that there's a problem over here somewhere. By the same token, if he goes this way, he then goes that way, he then goes that way, and then back down again. It tells us there's a problem here, and it tells us that there's a problem there. So that's what the ECG is trying to do as well, all right? So each lead looks at the heart from its own particular point of view. And that's basically where we're starting off from. Okay, so sorry, I got a bit sidetracked over there, but I hope you guys are following what I'm trying to say. So the first thing that we need to look at is just that normal flow of electricity. Is it flowing normally? And it doesn't mean that because it's flowing normally, everything is fine, but at least it's a good starting off point. Okay, all right. So let's go from there. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is each of us is going to imagine that we are an electrode, all right? So for this argument's sake, let's say that we are AVR, all right? So AVR is looking at electricity that's moving in this direction. So that electricity that's moving, now remember when the heart is stationary, the electricity is here. There's AVR, it's having a look. So what AVR sees is AVR sees electricity move away from it, and then it sees electricity go back to normal. It sees electricity move away from it and then move back to normal. So what basically AVR is AVR is kind of looking at something moving away from it and coming back towards it. So what we actually see and what AVR normally sees as well is that, I just want to draw it for you guys. So what it sees when it's on an ECG, so imagine we've got a little ECG going over there. So the heart starts to beat. AVR sees the electricity moving away, right? So that's by the time it's moved there. And then it sees electricity moving towards it again as everything returns back to normal. So AVR sees a negative deflection, all right? So that's one of the ones, all right? So let's have a look and see if we were correct. AVR always sees a net movement of electricity away from itself, which we see there. So it always gives us a negative, or it should give us a negative illustration on our graph. And our graph is the ECG. the ECG is a visual representation of what each lead is looking at, in this case AVR. So the deflection is always negative. In a normal heart, that's how it should be. Let's take a look at the next one. So now let's imagine that we are AVL for a second. So AVL sits in this direction. I think this has just been a bit compressed. AVL should be just, let's say just around there. So in AVL's case, it's a little bit different. So what AVL sees, imagine, all right, imagine that we're starting from there. So nothing's happening, and then electricity starts to move. But electricity moves in the same direction that AVL is looking at it from. So AVL sees a positive deflection first. And then electricity goes back to where it was. In other words, the heart goes back to rest. So it sees a deflection that looks like that. All right. Now, these are very basic. I mean, of course, everyone doesn't look up and down. We've got QRS complexes and things like that. We'll get to that a bit later on. But just so that you understand that basic fundamental, all right? Let's clear that out. Let's have a look at the next slide. All right. All right. Sorry, just trying to get there. So let me just go back. Let's have a look at AVF. And let's see what happens to AVF. So AVF, you can see it's kind of looking at electricity coming towards it for a little while because it's looking from this point of view. So you kind of got to imagine it looking at AVF from AVF is looking at electricity from its peripheral vision, if I can put it that way. Love to have been able to demonstrate it to you guys, but this thing doesn't allow me, unfortunately, to. Let me see. Yeah, maybe it will allow me. There we go. All right, so I am there now, so you can see me a little bit. So if you can imagine that I'm AVF, what I see is I see electricity starting, all right? So we'll follow it from there. So AVF is seeing electricity starting, coming towards it. So it's only looking forward, right? And then it sees electricity moving towards it, and then it sees electricity moving away from it for a little while. So actually what it gets is that while electricity is moving towards it, it sees a positive deflection because it can see it. It's coming towards it. And then it's changing. It's coming towards it, and then it goes away from it. It goes away from it for a while. And then, of course, the heart returns to normal. So that's why we get a biphasic type of picture. So this is just to give you an idea of why the waveforms look the way they do. Now, I know this has nothing to do with the axis in the meantime. We're going to get to that in a little while, but I just wanted you guys to take note of that, all right? So they tend to see a more positive deflection or biphasic deflections, all right? So that's what we're trying to say. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So what about the other three leads? Let's look at lead one, all right? We'll start from there. So lead one, we're going to draw it on here. Lead one, initially, the heart is at rest. Then it sees electricity moving towards it. If I'm lead one, I'm watching electricity coming towards me. Sorry, I'm watching electricity coming towards me and then return back down to normal. So it goes back down to zero as electricity moves back to normal. All right. So that's what happens for lead one. All right. Let's have a look at lead two. So lead two is also seeing electricity coming towards it in quite a significant direction. So what it sees, again, it sees nothing, and then it sees electricity coming towards it, electricity returning back to normal, and then everything goes back down to where it should have been, all right? And lead three, now lead three again, is kind of like looking straight ahead, and then it sees electricity for a little while, coming this way, and then you can see for the majority of it, electricity is moving away from it. So what do we expect to see? We expect to see initially electricity moving towards, and then we see electricity moving away from it. So we probably get something that looks a bit like that. Then we get something there and like that. All right. So I wonder if we were correct. We're going to try now. Let's have a look and see. All right. So lead one sees mainly a positive deflection. Lead two also sees mainly a positive deflection. And lead three sees a biphasic to negative deflection. All right. So now you understand why the ECG is showing what it's showing. So we're going to get a little bit more technical now. So if we had to take all of those leads, all 6 of those leads, and plot them around the body, this is what we would see. So this is a very interesting diagram. And if you have a chance, I would suggest that you go and you learn this off. This is a diagram that shows you the exact plotting. In other words, how many degrees each, or from what degree out of 360, the the lead is looking at the heart, right? If the heart is the center. But essentially, we look at 0 degrees, minus 90, 180, 0, 90, and 180, all right? And we have each lead. So we have AVR here, AVR there, lead 1, lead 2, lead 3, and lead AVF, looking at the heart directly from the bottom, all right? This thick line here is the normal axis. So that's what we normally see. Okay, good. Now, let's simplify that a little bit. We don't want to get too technical. We were saying we just want to do basics, all right? So here we have lead 1, and here we had lead AVF, all right? And we only have 4 possible electrical axes. So we have normal, which is this one here. We have a left-sided axis. We have a right-sided axis. In other words, electricity moving in that direction. Electricity moving in this direction is a left-sided. And if electricity moves in the completely opposite direction, that means an extreme right axis. Okay, so let's have a look at lead 1 and lead AVF. And let's look at it from their point of view. All right. So let's take lead AVF, for example. All right. So lead AVF is looking directly ahead. Let's try and have a look and see. So lead AVF is looking more or less directly ahead. So what it sees is that it sees electricity coming towards it, right? Positive. And just for a short while, electricity has gone behind it. But for the majority of the time, electricity is in front of it. So it's got a positive deflection mainly, right? And then let's look at lead 1. Lead 1 is looking at it from the other 90 degrees. So electricity is coming from that direction. So lead 1 also sees electricity moving towards it. And then for a little while, it just goes behind it, right, when it's here, but it can still see it, just that it's gone a little bit behind, then it goes back to normal. But essentially what the two of them are seeing is they are seeing positive deflections. They are seeing electricity moving towards them the majority of the time, all right? And remember, we're looking at the majority. So that means on an ECG, if we look only at leads 1 and leads AVF, if we only took those two into consideration, and both of them saw positive deflections, it would mean that we would have a normal electrical axis. Now let's take another one. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to the next one. So if both of them are positive, it shows us that we have a normal axis. Now let's shift that axis to the right, okay? So, I mean, to the left. So now the electricity is moving to the left. So let's take lead AVF, all right? So lead AVF, remember, he's looking at it right down here from the bottom. And we still haven't gotten to exactly how you work out the axis. We're going to get to some examples now, but I just want to show you. So let's start with lead AVF. What lead AVF is seeing is for a little while. Remember, he's looking forward. So for a little while, he sees electricity sort of, coming in this direction towards him, just here, right? Electricity is just kind of moving towards him. But then for the majority of the time, it's running away, So he's seeing the electricity coming from this side. So he sees it coming towards him in his peripheral vision, but then it sort of flies off in the other direction. So he sees something that looks like this, all right? So he's seeing a negative deflection mainly. And let's look at lead 1. Lead 1, also looking straight ahead, is mainly seeing a positive deflection, all right? And then eventually it goes a bit behind him, and then it comes out like that. So he's seeing electricity moving towards him for the majority of the time. So when lead 1 is looking at electricity that's moving in a left-sided axis, he will see electricity moving towards him. But lead AVF sees electricity moving away from him. Okay, right. I hope that makes a bit of sense. We're going to get a bit more into it now. All right. So this is another way. Now, this is not the only method. I'm going to show you, there's many methods. I'm just showing you a way that I've taught to my guys over the time, and they seem to have understood it. All right. So let's change it to a right-sided axis. Now let's take lead 1 this time. So what is lead 1 seeing? So lead 1 is here. Electricity is coming towards him for a little while, or her, sorry, don't mean to be sexist, coming towards, and then for the majority of the time, is shooting away. So in this case, lead 1 is seeing electricity coming a bit towards, then electricity goes away, and then it returns to normal, and then it settles down. And what is lead AVF seeing? So lead AVF is sitting over here, and lead AVF sees a whole lot of electricity coming towards him or her, right? Whole lot of electricity coming towards, and then right towards the end, it just sort of slips behind. So in a right-sided deflection, lead AVF is seeing more of a positive deflection, and lead 1 is seeing more of a negative deflection. I hope that's starting to make a bit of sense. we have to imagine ourselves being those electrodes, okay? And initially, when you start looking at the axis, it takes you a few minutes. And when you finally get good at it, it takes you literally 2 seconds, and you know exactly what it is, all right? So when lead 1 is facing downwards, lead AVF is facing upwards, then that's a right axis deviation, okay? Let's try the last one. So what happens if there's a extreme right axis deviation? In other words, electricity is moving into that quadrant. So it's standing on this side and going on that side. So let's have a look at lead AVF. So lead AVF, from his peripheral vision, he sees electricity coming for a short while, just there, all right? And then he sees electricity shooting off. So he sees a little bit towards him, and then he sees it going off and running away in the opposite direction, all right? And what about lead 1? So lead 1 seeing it from the other side. For a little while, electricity is coming towards him, and then it also shoots off far away from him. So he sees electricity almost in a similar pattern. He sees it like that, and then it goes away from him, and then it kind of returns back to normal. So in other words, it's the complete opposite of a normal axis. They both point downwards, all right? So I hope that makes sense. Now we're going to try a few examples, all right? Because we just need to get the hang of this by looking at real examples, okay? Right, so let's try a few of them. So let me get my drawing up. So let's get a little drawing up, all right? And I'll show you guys how you can work this out on each one, all right? We'll keep this drawing up, and then we'll go from there, all right? So let's keep that there, and let's put that there, all right? So here we are going to put lead I. Oh, sorry. Let's just put that there. Lead I. Just drop the size of this, maybe. Okay, so let's put lead I there. Let's put another one. And let's put AVF down there. All right. So we've got lead AVF that's sitting over there. All right. I just want to show you a simple thing that even you can draw on the side. Okay. And then let's take another one. Let's put something here. So this is our normal. All right. That's our normal axis. Let's bring this back again. Sorry. Let's put another text box. Let's put it here. All right. This is left-sided. Right. That's left-sided. Let's put this here. This is right. Okay. Let's close that up completely, just that it doesn't block us. Okay. I think you guys may have to bear with me. Say it's something new that I'm learning as well. Oh, it's not allowing me to show that. All right, that's fine. And then let's put another one there. And this is extreme right. Okay, we'll just leave it like that just so that it doesn't block off everything. All right, so let's have a look at what's going on in this particular one. All right, so we're going to come off that. Let's go back to our drawing. So let's look at lead 1. Which way is lead 1 pointing? Lead 1 is pointing positive. So here we have lead 1. So that means electricity is moving towards lead 1 because it must be seeing it as a positive deflection. So that means we've either got, it's either there or it's there. Agreed? Because it's only in the left and the normal axis that lead 1 will see a positive. If your electricity was moving in this direction, electricity would be negative. Agreed? So we can already discount these two. So let's take those out. All right. Let's take them out of the equation. All right. So that one's not in the equation. And that one's not in the equation at all. Okay. So which one is going to tell us where electricity is going? We need to look at lead AVF. So lead AVF is also moving in a positive direction. So that means electricity must be moving towards AVF. So let's see. So that if electricity is moving towards AVF, it means it can only be moving in this direction or in that direction. Lead AVF can never be up here because we've already discounted the left-hand side. So what's the only one that we are left with? Normal. So that's another way that we can work it out. So what we're going to do is let's keep this drawing on here. All right. And let's move on. All right. So in this case, we've got a, sorry. So we've got a normal axis. Now let's try another one. So we've got again our lead 1, AVF, normal, left, extreme right, and right. Let's look at lead 1 over here. I hope the annotation box isn't blocking you guys. But in any case, in this one, lead one is pointing negative. All right. So there we have lead one. So if it's pointing in a negative direction, then what it means is it must be moving away from lead one. So it means our axis is either extreme right or right. We know for sure that it cannot be in the left, all right? And we know for sure that it cannot be normal, because if it was there, lead one would be pointing upwards. So let's have a look at lead AVF. Which way is lead AVF pointing? Lead AVF is pointing positive, is pointing upwards. So that means electricity must be coming towards lead AVF, which means that electricity is either in that direction or in this direction. It can never be in the extreme right, because that would mean electricity is moving away and AVF would be negative. So we are left with a right-sided axis. So this is just a little thing that you can draw to also work out for yourself what's going on. Okay, so let's undo that again and we're going to try the next example. All right. And eventually what will happen is you guys will be able to do this in your head. You won't need to physically draw something to be able to show what's going on. All right. So this is a right axis deviation. Let's try another one. So let's start with lead one again. So lead one is positive. So that means electricity is moving towards him. All right. Or her, sorry. So it's either moving in that direction or in that direction. So we've either got a normal or a left axis. We know for sure that we don't have an extreme right axis, and we know for sure that we don't have a right axis. Okay. So which one is going to tell us? AVF is going to tell us. So let's look at AVF. So AVF is pointing negatively.
How are you?
Fine. Okay, sorry about that, guys. All right. So where were we? We were talking about lead AVF. So lead AVF is negative. So that means it's moving away. So in other words, we know for sure that it cannot be here. It can't be there because that would mean that it's moving towards. All right. And if lead AVF is negative, then it means it's either moving in that direction or that direction. So it leaves us with just a left axis. Okay. So that's how we come out to that one. Let's try one last example. Let's get all of that out. Okay. So let's get on to this. That's a left axis deviation that we had seen. So let's try this one. So we've got lead one and lead AVF. Okay, so let's look at this one again. So let's start with lead one. So lead one is negative. What is that telling us? That's telling us that electricity is moving there or electricity is moving there. Agreed. We already know we can discount this one, and we know we can discount this one because we've already taken them out. All right. So again, we need to look at lead AVF. And which way is lead AVF pointing? Now, in this case, we'll take it as negative. All right. So if lead AVF is negative, that means electricity is moving away from it. So it's either moving in that direction or moving in that direction, but it can never be moving in this direction. Agreed. So what's the only one that's left? Extreme right. So that's how we get to that at the end. All right. So this is just a simple diagram that you can use to actually tell you. Now, this is not to say this is the end of electrical axis. Electrical axis does get a little bit more complex when you have to work out the exacts of it. But if you're starting off at basic level and you want to know more or less which way the axis is going, then this is a great starting point. All right. So let's clear all of that out. Let me just switch off my laser pointer as well. Oh, sorry about that. All right. Let's just clear all the drawings from here. All right. So you guys must just keep an eye on that. All right. Right. So the last one, as we said, it was an extreme right axis deviation. Right. So why do we need to know? Because there's a few reasons why a person would have certain things. Basically, to understand this, for a patient to have a left axis deviation, what it means is that the left side is taking more electricity or the right side is damaged. Okay, so that would be one of the two reasons why it would be happening. So you repeat after me. Either number one, the left side is taking more electricity. So let's look at causes for that. Normal, which can happen, mechanical shifts like pregnancy, where your heart needs to be enlarged, left ventricular hypertrophy, left bundle branch block, congenital heart disease. all these things that are, and an inferior myocardial infarct, which is basically that the entire that bottom part is damaged, and now the electricity is shunted to the left hand side. The right axis, what it's saying is that now the left side is damaged, or the right side has become larger. So that's what we see going on. And if you can remember all of these, great. But for most of us, we can't. But it gives you a good starting point. The one that we need to remember a lot is extreme right axis. Because with extreme right axis, the most common cause is pulmonary embolus, which is something which we see in the emergency department quite often. Okay. So that's something to remember. So this is just a little joke to finish off, right? By the end of the week, by the end of seeing these lectures, this will actually not make you have an ectopoopy, all right? When you look at an ECG and you go, oh crap, all right? But just for interest's sake, let's work out the axis on this one, okay? So we're going to, let's work it out. So let's draw, all right? So let's imagine we've got our little diagram over there, all right? With lead 1 at this side and lead AVF at the bottom. And let's look at lead 1. So lead 1 is positive. So that means electricity is either moving in that direction or that direction. Okay. And then if we look at lead AVF, we see lead AVF is also moving in a positive direction. So we can take this one out. We know for sure there's nothing there, all right, so far. And we can also take this one out because we know lead 1 is positive. And then when we come to lead AVF, it's also positive. So that means electricity is either moving in that direction or that direction. So the only one that we are left with is normal. So what that means is, doesn't mean that because everything is normal, you can stop there. It just tells you that one aspect of the ECG is okay. All right. So remember that, but it's a good starting off point. All right. The next one we're going to cover is rhythm, and we'll do that in a separate lecture. Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that you guys have put interest into this, and we will get through it. Don't worry. Okay. All right. Not a problem. Bye.